Every day, we're seeing another American murdered. We're seeing another child brutalized. We're seeing another woman raped by an illegal immigrant that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris released. And you mentioned some of the names. Laken Riley, beautiful 22-year-old woman in Georgia, a nursing student. It's worth breaking down for a minute what happened with Laken Riley. So her murderer entered the country illegally, and she was apprehended by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They had him in custody. He was an illegal immigrant from Venezuela. All they had to do was follow the law. Take him, put him on a plane, and fly him back, and Laken Riley would still be alive. But they didn't. Instead, they released him. They defied the law. They utterly ignored federal statutory requirements and just let him go. Now, what happened? He went to New York City, where he was arrested a second time, this time for endangering the safety of a child. But New York City is a sanctuary city, so they let him go again. Had New York prosecuted him and kept him in jail, Laken Riley would still be alive. But instead, he went from New York down to Georgia, and Laken Riley got up one morning to go jogging. And this murderer took a rock and beat her to death with it. It was utterly and completely preventable. Rachel Marin, beautiful mother of 5 in suburban Maryland, not far from here. Again, her murderer entered the country illegally. Again, he was in custody of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Again, they released him. He went to L.A. He broke into a woman's home. He terrorized the woman and her child. And then he came to Maryland and he raped and murdered Rachel Marin. By the way, you might think Georgia is not a border state. You might think suburban Maryland is not a border city. But Biden and Harris are sending illegal immigrants to every community in America. You look at Jeremy Caceres, the 2-year-old little boy in Prince George's County, murdered by an illegal immigrant Joe Biden and Kamala Harris released. You look at some of the children who have been assaulted. In Central Park, a 13-year-old girl raped in Central Park by an illegal immigrant that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris released. In Boston, they went even further. They didn't just release an illegal immigrant. In this instance, they flew an illegal immigrant from Haiti. They flew him to Boston, so he didn't even show up at the southern border. They put him on an airplane and said, come to Boston. Because in their world, what we need is more illegal immigrants. They flew him to Boston, released him in Boston, and he raped a 15-year-old girl with severe mental disabilities. He was arrested for it, and you know what a left-wing judge did in Boston? Released him on a $500 bail for raping a 15-year-old girl. And then you mentioned Jocelyn Nungaray. Look, that happened in my hometown of Houston. Jocelyn was a beautiful 12-year-old little girl. 2 men from Venezuela came into this country illegally, apprehended, in custody, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris released them. Let them go. And they went from El Paso, where they'd been apprehended, they went to Houston, Texas, and just a few weeks later, they kidnapped and raped and murdered Jocelyn Nungaray. Look, I've gotten to know Jocelyn's mom, Alexis. I've gotten to know Jocelyn's grandfather, Kelvin. I've sat in their living room as they endured the ultimate nightmare. I think the worst horror for anyone is for a parent to lose a child. And even worse than that is to lose a child knowing exactly the horrors she lived through in her last hours on earth. These animals bound Jocelyn's hands and feet. She was found with her pants removed, discarded in a bayou like a piece of trash. Jocelyn's murder was entirely preventable. On Twitter, I make a point of almost every day there's another story, and I just retweet it with the hashtag every damn day.